as far as, is he going to turn people in? Is he going to cooperate?
He said, nobody that I deal with, nobody that I know is going to do anything with y'all. No business at all.
If the federal government wants him to cooperate and they going to cut his time.
Diddy's sentencing just happened. And according to Gene Deal, this isn't just about one man going to prison. It's about the powerful people who could fall with him. Gene Deal, Diddy's former bodyguard, just dropped a bombshell claiming the government didn't take Diddy down for the crimes we've seen on TV, but for what they found hidden in his mansion. Hundreds of tapes, cameras, and hard drives, all allegedly filled with footage that could expose some of the biggest names in music, politics, and Hollywood. And now, as Diddy's sentencing looms, people are starting to panic. Celebrities are cutting ties. Prosecutors are retiring mysteriously. And insiders say the real evidence has been buried. So tonight, we're diving into Gene Deal's shocking claims about what's on those tapes, who Diddy might have been protecting, and how his sentencing could reshape the entire entertainment industry. Because if what Gene says is true, Diddy's fall might just take everyone with him. When Gene Deal started talking, the internet stopped scrolling. This wasn't another random interview. This was a warning. Gene, who worked closely with Diddy for years, says what's happening right now goes way deeper than anyone realizes. To him, Diddy's arrest and sentencing aren't just about the crimes on paper. They're about the powerful secrets he was keeping. According to Gene, Diddy had a private obsession with recording everything, not just his music sessions or his studio life, but every single person who entered his homes, his parties, and his world. He allegedly kept cameras hidden in every corner of his mansions, even rooms guests didn't know about. These weren't just security cameras, they were leverage. Gene claims Diddy built an empire of blackmail, taping celebrities, executives, and politicians doing things they'd never want the public to see. We're talking about billionaires, record label heads, even members of royalty. Gene specifically mentioned Prince Harry attending one of Diddy's infamous parties, the kind where nobody left without being on camera. He says Diddy made it cool for elite white executives to party with street legends, turning his mansion into a safe playground for the powerful to do whatever they wanted. But while they were having fun, Diddy was collecting evidence. According to Gene, that's what made him untouchable for so long. Because when you have dirt on the people in charge, you become harder to destroy. But Gene believes that protection is gone now. Once the feds realized what Diddy was hiding, everything changed. Gene even suggested that the government's true goal wasn't to take Diddy down for the visible crimes, but to get their hands on those tapes. He flat out said they only got him because they wanted those tapes. So what was on them? Who was being recorded? And why were so many of the rich and famous showing up at Diddy's house in the first place? According to Gene, those answers could shake the entire entertainment world. Because Diddy wasn't just partying with stars, he was documenting their secrets. And when the FBI raided his mansion, they didn't just walk out with evidence, they walked out with the keys to Hollywood's darkest vault. Gene Deal didn't just tease what was on those recordings. He painted a picture so disturbing it's hard to forget. According to him, Diddy's private footage isn't just about wild parties or celebrity gossip. It's about control, leverage, and the kind of evidence that could ruin careers, marriages, and entire empires overnight. He claims Diddy's cameras captured everything: the drinking, the drugs, the intimacy, and the illegal deals that were never meant to see the light of day. Gene says these weren't Hollywood parties. They were setups, a trap disguised as luxury. Diddy would invite A-listers, politicians, and CEOs, make them untouchable, untouchable, then record their every move. And it worked. Gene suggests that's how Diddy kept his influence for decades, not through music or money, but through fear. People knew what he had on them. That's why they kept doing business with him even when rumors about his darker side started spreading. They couldn't afford for those tapes to leak. During the federal raid, agents reportedly took over 200 cameras and multiple hard drives from Diddy's mansion. But here's where it gets strange. None of that footage has been shown in court. Instead, prosecutors only used one specific tape, the one Cassie provided, to build part of the case. Gene immediately questioned that. Why use Cassie's tape, but not the ones from Diddy's own house? He believes it's because showing those tapes publicly would have made them part of the court record, which means anyone could legally request copies once the trial was over. And that, Gene says, would have exposed some of the most powerful people in the world. To him, the silence around those seized recordings says everything. It's not about protecting victims, it's about protecting reputations. Gene even compared it to a hidden network, a secret deal between law enforcement and the elite. He believes those tapes are being buried on purpose, not destroyed, kept locked away as insurance for the very people Diddy once blackmailed. But that's not where the story ends. Because right after the feds got those tapes, something suspicious happened inside the investigation itself. Something Gene says proves this case was never just about Diddy. Right after the FBI raided Diddy's homes and seized those 200+ cameras, something happened that made Gene Deal and the entire internet raise an eyebrow. A key federal prosecutor working on the case suddenly retired. No explanation, no formal statement, just gone. Gene says the timing was too perfect to ignore. He points out that this prosecutor had been deeply involved in Diddy's investigation from the start, managing search warrants and evidence handling. But the moment those tapes were confiscated, the moment they became potential public evidence, this man announced he was leaving for personal reasons. And it wasn't just a quiet retirement. According to Gene, the prosecutor was suddenly living large. New house, new money, new silence. Gene put it bluntly, right after they got the tapes and everything, he retired. Probably got $1 million house somewhere. He even claims that the prosecutor tried to mask his departure as political, saying he left because of changes in the administration, blaming it on Trump's incoming policies. But Gene and others don't buy that. The timing lines up exactly with the federal seizure of Diddy's tapes. To Gene, that wasn't coincidence, it was damage control. Because think about it, if those tapes contained footage of executives, politicians, or even global figures doing what Gene suggests they were doing, then the last thing anyone in power would want is a courtroom making that evidence public record. Gene says it's not that the government didn't see what was on the tapes, it's that they saw too much. And once they realized how many big names were entangled in Diddy's secret world, the goal shifted. This wasn't about exposing Diddy anymore. It was about protecting the system around him. And that's why, according to Gene, the sentencing feels like smoke and mirrors, because the true story is being hidden behind the scenes. But Gene didn't stop there. He says this cover-up goes much higher than one prosecutor. He believes there's a pattern of silence forming, from Hollywood insiders to music moguls. And the names he brings up next might just explain why. Gene Deal says the story everyone's seeing on the news, the sentencing, the evidence, the legal drama, is just the surface. Behind it, he claims, is a network of people far more powerful than Diddy himself. People who used him, protected him, and are now working overtime to bury him quietly before their own names come out. In his words, it's deeper than what we see. According to Gene, Diddy wasn't just some reckless celebrity throwing parties. He was a middleman, a connector between two worlds that were never supposed to collide, the streets and the elites. He made it cool for record execs, billionaires, and politicians to hang out with rappers and hustlers. But that connection came with a price. Because once Diddy had the cameras rolling, everyone who joined those parties was compromised. Gene says those tapes show the kind of things that could end careers instantly. Drugs, exploitation, and even situations involving minors. But the question isn't whether those things happen, it's why the system never exposed them. Gene believes the reason is simple. Too many of the wrong people were caught on camera. These weren't random Hollywood guests. These were executives from Universal, high-ranking producers, and global figures who shaped the entertainment industry from behind the curtain. The kind of people who could make scandals disappear with a single phone call. And if Diddy's tapes really do show what Gene claims, then taking him down publicly would mean dragging those people down too. That's why, Gene says, the case feels incomplete. Why some of the charges were left out, and why even the most obvious evidence hasn't been made public. He points to the fact that Diddy wasn't charged for several things listed in the case summary, like firearms and narcotics found in his homes, as proof that someone is controlling how much of this story actually reaches the public. They didn't want to open the floodgates. Gene's voice gets serious when he says, they're protecting somebody. Maybe a lot of somebodies, and that theory isn't far-fetched. The timing of the prosecutor's retirement, the missing footage, the sealed files, all of it hints at something being managed from above. It's as if Diddy became the fall guy for an entire machine, a machine built to feed off fame, power, and silence. But what Gene said next shifted the focus completely, from the justice system to the people Diddy once called his friends. Because the moment his empire started crumbling, some of the biggest names in music began running for cover. The moment Diddy's empire began to collapse, one thing became impossible to ignore: Jay-Z and Beyoncé's sudden distance. For decades, Jay and Diddy were seen as two sides of the same coin. New York kings who turned hip-hop into billion-dollar business. But as soon as the raids hit and the lawsuits piled up, that lifelong friendship went quiet. No statements, no support, just silence. Gene Deal and singer Jaguar Wright say that silence isn't loyalty, it's self-protection. They believe Jay and Beyonce are doing everything they can to separate themselves before Diddy's sentencing blows the lid off what's really been happening behind closed doors. To understand why, Gene takes us back to the 1990s, when Jay and Diddy were building their empires side by side. They collaborated on tracks like Young G's and I Know What Girls Like, and even shared many of the same circles. Biggie, Clive Davis, Russell Simmons. They rose together from Brooklyn streets to corporate boardrooms. But Gene and Jaguar claimed that Rise wasn't clean. It was fueled by the same power network that Diddy used to control the industry. Jaguar Wright, who's been exposing industry secrets for years, dropped a shocking claim. Jay-Z wasn't just Diddy's peer, he was part of the same machine. She accused Jay of having connections to R. Kelly, Harvey Weinstein, and even Jeffrey Epstein, suggesting they all ran in overlapping social and business circles designed to protect one another. And she says Jay-Z's silence isn't random, it's strategic. She went even further, saying Jay helped fund the surviving R. Kelly documentary through his longtime friend and co-writer, Dream Hampton, not out of activism, but as a distraction. According to her, that project was meant to expose R. Kelly publicly while keeping attention away from others who were allegedly doing the same things behind the scenes. Gene agrees that this web of alliances explains why Diddy was able to move unchecked for so long. When the powerful protect each other, accountability disappears. And now, with Diddy facing a life-changing sentence, Jay-Z and Beyonce are scrambling to rewrite the narrative, unfollowing, avoiding public appearances, and making sure no cameras catch them near Diddy's name. But Gene and Jaguar both say it's too late. Once those tapes resurface, no amount of silence or distance will save them, because if Diddy's recordings really include what insiders claim, the secret meetings, the late-night parties, the celebrity guests doing things they swore they'd never do, then Jay-Z and Beyonce could find themselves pulled straight into the same investigation they're running from. And according to Jaguar, the feds may have already started asking questions, not just about Diddy, but about who helped keep him protected all these years. As the investigation around Diddy widened, whispers started spreading. And Gene Deal says those whispers weren't rumors. He claims federal agents have already spoken to Jay-Z, and it allegedly happened before one of the biggest public events of Jay's career, his Super Bowl announcement. Jaguar Wright was the first to hint at it, saying Jay was questioned by the feds right before he took the NFL stage, which she believes was no coincidence. According to her, the timing was all about optics, a way to remind the world that Jay-Z was too big to fall, while quietly keeping him under watch. She even claimed they already talked to him before he made that Super Bowl announcement. That statement shook fans because if it's true, it means the feds already know that Diddy's world doesn't end with Diddy, it stretches right into Jay-Z's empire. And then came an even darker connection, one Gene and Jaguar both touched on: the death of Kathy Carana White. Kathy was allegedly Jay-Z's pregnant mistress who reportedly died just 24 hours after she said she was going public with their relationship and the baby. The official cause was ruled as an aneurysm, but Gene and others close to the industry never believed that story. Gene's exact words cut deep. Wasn't an aneurysm, Diddy. Or did you pay the same coroner that you paid before? It was a chilling claim, one that tied together the worlds of power, silence, and fear. Gene believes Kathy's death was another part of a long trail of people who got too close to secrets they weren't supposed to know. And here's where things get even more tangled. Gene suggests that Diddy and Jay weren't just friends, they were business partners in silence. Each man knew too much about the other, which is why both became nearly untouchable for decades. But now, with Diddy facing sentencing and the walls closing in, Gene believes that pact of silence might finally break. He even hinted that if Diddy feels cornered, he might start talking. Not about himself, but about everyone else, including Jay-Z. Will Diddy start snitching? He better, because that might be the only thing that saves him to Gene. Diddy's sentencing isn't just about punishment, it's leverage. The kind that could turn the courtroom into a battlefield of names, confessions, and exposed alliances. And if that happens, it won't just be Diddy in trouble. It'll be everyone who stood beside him, stayed silent, or benefited from the empire he built. But before Diddy and Jay ever became global icons, one story from the past still haunts them both. A shooting, a cover-up, and a woman who's been silent for over 2 decades. To understand how long Diddy's web of protection has been in play, you have to go back, way back, to the night that almost ended his career. December 27, 1999. It was supposed to be a regular night out in New York City, but inside Club New York, chaos erupted. Shots rang out. 3 people were injured, and when the smoke cleared, police found Diddy and his then-girlfriend, Jennifer Lopez, fleeing the scene. The tabloids exploded. The biggest hip-hop mogul and one of Hollywood's rising stars caught up in a shooting that could have destroyed both of them. But here's where things get strange. According to Gene Deal and others close to the case, the truth of what happened that night never fully came out. Multiple witnesses claimed Diddy started the argument that led to gunfire. Officers said Lopez had gunshot residue on her hands. Even the woman who was hit that night said she saw Diddy holding a weapon. Yet somehow, both Diddy and J-Lo walked away clean. The charges against her were dropped almost immediately, and Diddy's legal team spun the story into a media circus, one that would end with someone else taking the fall. That someone was Shine Barrow, Diddy's young protege. Shine was convicted and sentenced to 10 years in prison for the shooting, even though to this day, he insists he didn't pull the trigger. Years later, Shine said what many already suspected, and that Diddy used him as a scapegoat. He sacrificed me to save himself. Gene Deal has been saying the same thing for years, that the club shooting was one of the first examples of how Diddy operated. When things went bad, someone else always paid the price, while he walked away untouched. And he believes J-Lo's career explosion in the early 2000s wasn't a coincidence either. She quickly distanced herself from Diddy, moved to Los Angeles, and reinvented herself as a pop icon. By the time Diddy went to trial, Lopez had already removed his name from her story. But according to Gene, she never stopped benefiting from that silence. He said, all she had to do was marry a white Oscar winner, and suddenly, nobody remembered she had a gun in her purse. But the story doesn't end with that shooting, because the same pattern of escape, silence, and protection would repeat again and again throughout Diddy's career. From Cassie's lawsuit to the federal raids, Diddy's always had a way of surviving. But this time, Gene says the cameras tell a story he can't run from, and he's not the only one saying that. Because now, other celebrities who once stood shoulder to shoulder with Diddy are getting caught in the fallout, some defending him, some exposing him, and others desperately pretending they never knew him at all. When the walls started closing in on Diddy, the ripple effect hit Hollywood fast. Suddenly, everyone who had partied with him, done business with him, or even casually associated with him was running for cover, or trying to rewrite history. And Gene Deal says that panic speaks volumes. Some people went silent, others started talking too much. But one thing became clear: no one wanted to be next. Take Kanye West, for example. His relationship with Diddy has been a roller coaster for years. One moment praising him as a mentor and hero, the next calling him a Fed collaborator. Back in 2022, Kanye accused Diddy of making a secret deal with the government after his arrest, even saying, "That's why you gotta come at me, because you made a deal with the feds." But fast forward to 2024, and Kanye's tune changed completely. While Diddy sat behind bars, Kanye suddenly became one of his loudest defenders, publicly demanding his release and even telling fans, "We need Diddy out there." Gene says that kind of flip isn't random, it's fear. Diddy's alleged recordings didn't just include wild party footage. They reportedly captured private conversations and deals that could bury artists, moguls, and entire labels. If Kanye's name or image appeared on any of those drives, defending Diddy might be less about loyalty and more about self-preservation. Then there's Usher, who once called Diddy a big brother. In an old interview, Usher revealed he lived with Diddy for a year when he was just 13. He described strange and curious things happening in that mansion, things he didn't understand at the time. Usher laughed it off back then, but today that clip feels a lot darker. Gene believes Usher's silence now is intentional, that he doesn't want those early memories to resurface while the FBI combs through Diddy's seized footage. And it's not just musicians. Hollywood names are being pulled into the mess too. Jennifer Lopez, once inseparable from Diddy, hasn't said a single word since his arrest. Gene called her silence strategic, reminding fans that Lopez still has never spoken publicly about the 1999 shooting or her connection to Diddy's legal team afterward. Meanwhile, other stars are scrambling to clean their image, deleting old photos, unfollowing Diddy on social media, or issuing vague statements about respecting the legal process. It's the same script we've seen before when a celebrity scandal goes nuclear. Distance first, denial second. But Gene believes it won't work this time. Why? Because if those tapes ever surface, every single person who appeared in them is part of the story, whether they like it or not. He said, "You think he didn't tape everybody? Come on, he taped everything." Everybody. That line stuck with fans because it makes you wonder. If Diddy really has all that footage, then who's next? Which superstar could be exposed? And who's pulling strings behind the scenes to make sure the wrong faces never see the light of day? As Gene puts it, they all knew what was going on. They just thought it would never catch up to them, but it has. And now, with Diddy's sentencing approaching, those same people are watching their names appear in lawsuits, documents, and whispers across the industry. The damage is spreading. And some insiders believe this case could permanently change how power works in Hollywood, because this isn't just a downfall, it's a reckoning. With Diddy's sentencing only weeks away, the entire entertainment world feels like it's holding its breath. What started as one man's downfall is now turning into something far bigger, a chain reaction that could redefine power in Hollywood. Every day, new lawsuits surface, new names leak, and new insiders start talking. Some of Diddy's oldest collaborators, producers, assistants, even former bodyguards, are quietly reaching out to lawyers, terrified they might be next. Gene Deal says that's not paranoia, that's guilt. Because deep down, everyone in Diddy's circle knows those cameras didn't stop rolling when the music did. The FBI seized over 200 cameras, hard drives, and encrypted devices from his properties. And while the public hasn't seen what's on them, insiders claim they contain decades of footage, from late-night industry parties to meetings involving executives, artists, and global names most people would never expect. According to Gene, this footage isn't just evidence. It's a blueprint of corruption that could topple billion-dollar brands and expose who really runs the industry. And here's where things get darker. Legal experts say that if any of those recordings are introduced during sentencing, they could become part of public record, forcing the government to release transcripts or visual proof. That's why many believe the real battle right now isn't happening in the courtroom. It's happening behind closed doors, where lawyers are negotiating which evidence stays buried. Meanwhile, celebrities once linked to Diddy are scrambling. Some, like Jay-Z and Beyonce, have practically vanished from public life. Others, like Kanye West, are doubling down on bizarre loyalty, defending Diddy even as more victims come forward. The split is clear: those who want distance and those too deep to escape. Gene Deal believes that's exactly why the system is moving so carefully, because the minute one of those tapes leaks, it won't just destroy reputations, it'll expose a hidden network of power and exploitation that stretches far beyond music. They're protecting somebody, Gene said, maybe a whole lot of somebodies. And maybe that's why the media's gone quiet. Maybe that's why some outlets seem to report only what's safe, leaving the rest to speculation and whispers online. But with each passing week, it's getting harder to contain. More victims, more lawsuits, more fear. As Gene puts it, it's a dirty game, and it's about to get real ugly. The outcome of Diddy's sentencing won't just determine how long he spends behind bars. It could decide how much truth the public ever gets to see. Because if those tapes surface, Diddy's story might become just the first domino to fall. And when it does, the fallout won't stop with him. Now that Diddy has been sentenced, everything Gene Deal warned about is starting to make sense. The world expected closure, but instead we got silence. No leaked footage, no powerful names dragged into court. Just Diddy, locked away, while the people around him move quietly in the shadows. Gene Deal's words hit harder than ever. They're protecting somebody. Because if this case was really about justice, why did the investigation stop at Diddy? Why did the tapes disappear? Why did the prosecutor walk away right after the raid? None of it adds up, unless Gene was right all along. Unless this was never about exposing Diddy, but about containing the damage. Now the industry looks nervous. Artists who once called Diddy family have gone ghost. Major execs have gone silent. Lawsuits that were once headline news are suddenly under review. It's like someone hit pause on an entire system, waiting for the public to move on. But Gene says it's not over. Because no matter how deep they bury the evidence, someone always talks. And once those tapes resurface, whether through leaks, court orders, or someone finally breaking under pressure, the truth will hit harder than any sentence could. Diddy may be behind bars, but the story he leaves behind is still unfolding. And if Gene Deal's right, this isn't closure. It's the calm before a much bigger storm. Because this sentencing didn't end Diddy's influence. It exposed how far the protection around him really goes. Do you think Diddy took the fall to protect others, or is more about to come out? Drop your thoughts below, and make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for the next chapter in this story, because the real reckoning might be just beginning.